Fatemah Mirza. I really enjoyed talking to Fatemah. She's very inspiring. She started her company back in 2010, Career Tuners. She helps people with resumes and cover letters and interviewing. The art and the science. We get into this, by the way, what the difference is, what she does of creating resumes and interviewing has really changed. Has really changed over the last 10 to 15 years. I'm a small business owner, as you know, or may not know. I got a lot of resumes. I get a lot of resumes in front of me. I do a lot of interviewing. And the style has most certainly changed, not just non face to face and virtually, but also just kind of shaking hands and getting first impressions. But we walk through some of the common mistakes about resumes, about cover letters, about the number one discrimination. I don't know if you know this; it was a complete surprise to me. Maybe I'll just spoil it now. But the number one discrimination in hiring, I think you'll be completely surprised with. Very, very surprising, and makes you reflect. But 72% people say that their impressions are impacted by someone's appearance and handshake. 85% of jobs are filled through networking. Very, very interesting. Professionally written resume boosts your earnings by 7%. But we talk about getting raises. We talk about on the employer side about what they can do. It's a great conversation. She's very matter of fact. She's very matter of fact and very straight and direct. But a great conversation with Fatemah Mirza. Thanks for listening. Hi, I'm Joey Pinz. People ask me, how did I lose 130 pounds? The quick answer is always discipline. I started my business, wasn't paying attention to my health, was eating too much, drinking too much sweets. My daughter was born. Next thing I know, I'm pre-diabetic, I have hypertension. I knew something had to change. Discipline. I, like many of you, have faced many challenges in your career, in your family, in your life, in your faith. How did you attack them? How did you approach them? How did you solve them, hopefully? It all had to have some degree of discipline. I'm also asked, how did you found and start a tech business that lasted over 25 years? Discipline. I was committed to it, enjoyed technology, didn't enjoy some aspects of it, but knew it was necessary. Discipline. Our podcast mission, how do we use discipline to better ourselves and society? Join me, please, as I talk to interesting people and discuss how they use discipline in their family and their passion and their careers and how it helped them. Our podcast vision, growth through learning from others. Joey Pinz Discipline Conversations. It'll be light and serious. Join us, please. Thank you for consideration. Very excited to talk to you, Fatemah Mirza. So excited. Are AI engines like ChatGPT and all the ones that are emerging, are they helping, hurting resume writing?
I think they're helping in general. I did a bunch of research on, what breaks the chat GPT script when you're writing a resume, and I put out a blog. You can check that out. It's chat GPT resume writing career tuners. Like if you Google that phrase, you'll find it. But basically, there are some critical mistakes that chat GPT makes with anything. I think just because the information that it's based on is a little bit outdated. So it can give sometimes very egregiously incorrect advice. So
Wow.
I tried to break it as much as possible, and I noted down all the points where it breaks, and I put it in that blog for anybody to check out if they wanted to.
And when you say it makes mistakes, I mean, you're going to send it some of your information and it's going to kind of format it, but how it just kind of makes assumptions.
No, like for example, it gives really bad advice. Like if I ask it to, uh, hey, I have this employment gap on my resume. Like, how do I fill it? This is like a very normal and
Uh,
natural thing for somebody to happen, but for some reason, it does. It's like we'll talk about everything that happened, and no, that's not what you're supposed to do. You're supposed when you have an employment gap on your resume, the employer is concerned of two things. First, were you like in jail or whatever? And
mm.
second, did your skills decline in this time? So you have to kind of address both of them. There's different ways to do that depending on your situation.
That's really interesting. Yeah, a gap there that happens. You've got a lot of great content on your.
Thank
I mean,
you.
some really cool statistics. 72% of people say their impressions are impacted by someone's appearance and handshake.
Hmm.
That's huge.
Yeah, yeah. That first impression is really important. And I think nowadays, since it's online, that
Yeah.
first look, whatever they're looking at, is really, really critical. It has to be in line with what they're looking for. Otherwise, they're not going to bother looking through the rest with as much care.
Because there's so many and they have to slim it down.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
You also give another great statistic about how professionally written resume boosts earning potential by 7%. How's that measured?
I don't think I did that specific study myself. I think I was quoting it, but I think what they did is they looked at, how much you were making before and then how much
Mm.
you're making after, comparing that with like the normal career growth that someone experiences when they're transitioning without that professionally written resume, and probably kind of comparing the two numbers.
And
That-
what
yeah, the
sorry,
math. I think that's how the math would add up. Yeah.
that makes sense. Yeah, before and after. So how do you help individuals with their resume and their cover letter? How does that work? Do they come to you and ask? Do you seek them out?
Yeah, people come to us. It's me and a team of 30 people. We work.
Yeah.
We're all a bunch of certified resume writers and career coaches, and people seek us out. They talk to us about their career, and we use that information to put their resumes together, or coach them on interviews, or prepare them to ask for a raise, or whatever it is that they want to work with us on.
And common mistakes. I mean, I'm a business owner. I get a lot of resumes. I haven't recently though, but I used to get a lot. And common mistakes when people writing the resume are what?
The biggest mistake is not really understanding what the other person is really looking for and just kind of dumping everything you have onto your resume instead of tailoring it to whatever job you're looking for. I think a lot of us, we've experienced a lot of growth in our career. What we did early on isn't really that relevant to what we're looking for now. So it makes sense to prune and tailor based on what your new objectives are. I see a lot of resumes that are kind of like organically grown, they're adding on to it as the years pass. But you need
Uh,
to have a cohesive edit every time you're looking for work.
how long should a resume be?
If you have less than 5 years of experience, I'd say about a page. If you have more, I'd say about 2 pages. This helps ensure that you have, all the right keywords on your resume for applicant tracking systems. Like you don't want someone with 30 years of experience cramming everything down onto one page, because then it's not going to be read properly and things aren't going to get picked up properly.
Another statistic you saw that they said like 15 years of experience is kind of the key measure.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Why 15?
I think it depends on the kind of job you're looking for. If you're looking for like a C-level job, it would be more. You'd probably
Mm.
want to come in with 20, maybe 25 years of experience. But I think beyond 15 years of experience, if you're not looking for a C-level job, the concern is that it's outdated. And because ageism is the number one form of discrimination in the United States, you want to de-age your resume by cutting out any experiences that may seem outdated, and by adding some youth and vitality to your resume by talking about some of the cool like physical things you do, if you volunteer, if you're going to school, any of that, things that you do to kind of stay sharp and stuff.
Well, you just kind of glanced over that, Fatima. So ageism is the number one?
Hmm.
Too young, too old, how does it work?
Yeah, if like being too old for jobs is the number one form of discrimination
Huh.
in the United States, even though it is illegal, but it's very difficult to prove. So it does happen every single day. It's very, very real.
But I mean, you're not putting your date of birth on the resume, are you?
If you put in like, you can guess how old someone is when you look at their resume and see how much experience they have. If you see
Ah.
someone's resume that goes back a really long time, you add 25 or whatever, and that's pretty much how old they are. So if I'm trying to hire, let's say, like a salesperson, and my target market is Gen Z consumers, and if I have someone with 20 years of experience, then an
Hmm.
initial bias that I may have is I'm not sure if this person is qualified to sell to like the younger clientele. I don't know if they can speak that language. And this might be unfair, and this might be completely, you know, like the most incorrect thing to think. But when you're just a piece of paper, you don't have the opportunity to showcase everything. So that
Mm.
initial impression, it does really help. It does really hurt sometimes. Yeah.
And sometimes being older, does it they expect just a higher salary and that excludes them as well?
That can be a potential impression that you're making as well. I'm expensive. I need a big budget. I need a
Mm.
large team, that kind of thing. So, kind of taking care of these assumptions on your resume can really help make the interview go more smoothly and can help you get a better job.
How about a video resume?
Video resumes, as far as my knowledge goes, are not parsable by the most commonly used job application systems. So, like, if
Hmm.
you upload your video to LinkedIn, it does help. Like, it does show like a human side of you. It does help show your face, but it's not how people are finding you. People are finding you based on your LinkedIn profile content or based on your resume. Your video resume can help supplement that first impression, but it's not going to be your first impression in most cases.
Now, if you're actually we gotta talk about LinkedIn too, but when you're actually applying for a job, should you send your resume, you send your cover letter, should you also include a video?
I mean, I think it won't hurt, but I don't think it's
Mm.
critical unless you're going for a job where that's required. Like if you're going to be on the screen or if you're going into acting, then I think it would be required. But otherwise, I don't think it would be necessary.
And cover letters too. Boy, I mean, I'm not a negative person, but I've seen some just really poorly worded cover letters that get in
Mhm.
front of me, when your advice there is keep it short. What's your advice with cover letters?
Yeah, I would keep it short, like about 200 words. That's about half a single lined page. So if you you know, space it out with paragraphs and stuff, it'll be almost one page. Keep it short. Don't focus too much on like perceived red flags in your candidacy. Like, don't go into detail about why you're relocating or why you have an employment gap or any of that. Just focus purely on showcasing the
Hmm.
person behind the skills that you're presenting on your resume. So bring some of those stories to life. Talk about how, maybe like your dual degree helps give you a perspective that maybe other candidates don't have. Talk about some of the things that would make you interesting after someone has already looked at your resume.
Yeah, Fatima, you have another one of your statistics too, how people remember the stories, not necessarily statistics. So
Mhm.
perhaps you want to tell, I'm guessing here, you want to tell more of a story with your cover letter and the resume more statistics?
Yeah, yeah, that can work. It depends on your on who you are, what your story is, and what you say on your cover letter. It's basically there to supplement your resume and help really showcase some of your soft skills and who you are as a leader.
It's so hard because, to try to have these 2 or 3-page documents represent
Mhm.
who you are. It's a difficult task and it shouldn't be taken lightly.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And as far as I mean, I've seen some should resumes change for different jobs?
Yeah, definitely, definitely. Because if I'm hiring someone for sales and all your job is saying is like teacher, 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 I'm going to be like, well, you don't know what you're talking about. Versus if
Mm.
I see one resume where you're focusing more on your teaching skills for a teacher job, that would make sense to me if that's who I'm hiring.
Yeah, because I looked for some engineers at one point, and then I, went to one of these recruiter type places, and all of a sudden I had 200 resumes in front of me, and it's
Mhm.
it's very hard to. So should the cover letter be saying, I look forward to hearing from you, company A. I like what you do. I mean, is it address that personally?
I don't think that level of effort is really necessary. I mean, I really believe in what's called ROTI, like return on time invested. Like, you don't
Mm.
want to put in more effort than you're going to get back, right? So with your cover letter, I would have, like, let's say if you're looking at multiple jobs, maybe one for sales, one for sales management, I would have like two cover letters, and then I would maybe change like one line, if that, if you're applying, but I wouldn't rewrite the cover letter from scratch. I don't think that's going to move the needle as much as you applying to just generally more positions.
And let's talk about LinkedIn, Fatima, because I mean, is this the number one kind of web source for job seekers?
Yeah, more than 94% of recruiters use LinkedIn. So it
Wow.
is the place to be found. Yeah.
Wow, I didn't realize it was that high. My goodness. And so if you're not looking for a job, do people come and seek you, or I don't know how it works in LinkedIn. There's a whole job seeker and hiring section there must be.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow. And is there a cost to it? And I guess if we're looking at it from, so I'm a small business owner. If I'm looking for it, actually, I think I have used it. Come to think about it, in the past, it's just been a little while, and there were a lot of great resumes on it. And so that's what you really push is trying to get your LinkedIn profile up.
Right.
For the actual interviewee, what
Mhm.
can they do to be more attractive on LinkedIn?
You want to make sure your profile is complete, that you're using lots of keywords throughout your profile, that you are talking about your best accomplishments. You want to talk about some of the problems that you've solved in the past and
Mm,
how you've capitalized on opportunities. You want to draw parallels between what you've done and what you'd like to do. So it's very similar to what you see on a resume, but visually it's very different because on LinkedIn, you don't actually see the entire profile unless you click around and read more. So that initial hook has to be very interesting in each field. There's a lot of like visual emphasis given to your job titles and the companies you worked at. So if that doesn't align with what you'd like to do next, you want to kind of take away some of the attention from that. And how you do that depends on your history. So, for example, if you're transitioning, you can write like an equivalent job title in parentheses, for example. There's like a bunch of things you can do. It depends on your
hmm.
situation. But yeah, those are basically the general practices. It's kind of like your resume, but visually it looks very different, and how the algorithms work to parse your content is different from how they would parse a resume. So these kind of things have to be taken into account when putting together your LinkedIn profile.
Yeah, you have this another great statistics, Fatima, where you say that the most critical thing hiring managers look for is problem solving. Never
Mhm.
heard that before. That's fascinating. And how does somebody prove that? Or
To basically talk about some of the problems that you solved in the past, the steps
hmm,
that you took to solve them, and what the outcome was of your actions.
very interesting. So you present almost a case study.
Exactly.
And how does that give me an example of that? Like so they were presented with a problem. And so they actually present how they solved it and what the result was. That's 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 pretty damning evidence right there. If I saw that, that'd be very impressive.
hmm hmm
And examples of that would be what, like efficiencies.
Yeah, it depends on the field that you're interested in. Can you give me a field off the top of your head, like
Uh,
a job?
Sales.
Well, in sales, you want to be overachieving on your quota. You want to be penetrating new sales territories. So, some of the problems that you can potentially run into is that the sales territory is not being penetrated enough. There's issue with the sales collateral.
Hmm,
People aren't being followed up with. So, these are some of the problems that you might be solving if you're in sales in order to increase sales.
very interesting. Very interesting. And your firm, of course, that you started back in 2010.
Mhm.
You've got I think you said 30 employees there as well, and you have a kind of this race model, RACE, which is an
Mhm.
acronym. It's very interesting. Can we talk about that?
Yeah, basically, we want to help people wherever they are in their career, right? So, some of that might entail reinventing yourself. So, that's the R in race. Reinventing might mean, hey, you know what? I'm totally done with this field. I want to move into a new field. Or,
Mm,
I'm totally done with where I am. I want to become a manager. Or, I am a manager, but I don't know like how to really manage. Or I just got promoted to a director level role, and what I've been doing as a manager doesn't cut it. So, that we provide coaching to help you figure all of those questions out and to create an action plan that's uniquely tailored around you and who you are as a person. And then comes A for advanced rebranding. That's your resume, cover letter, LinkedIn, how you present yourself in interviews. And then we have C, which is career mobilization, which basically entails applying to jobs for you, sharing your resume with our recruiter friends, and we can even network for you if you like. And the
Hmm.
last component of what we do, earning potential maximization, is where we coach you on negotiating for your salary and potentially asking for a raise if you're already employed.
Well, let's talk about that. I mean, I'm
Mhm.
sure. How do employees look for a raise? What are your tips there?
Well, first and foremost, you want to make sure that your boss respects you as a professional. Like,
Mm.
you don't want to, like, the worst thing you can do is ask for a raise when your boss thinks that you're an underperformer or isn't impressed with who you are. So make sure that your performance evaluation is good. If you don't know what your boss thinks of you, ask for a performance review, ask to be assessed, and ask if there's anything that you can improve on if you're interested in growing in your career, and work on that. Then
Hmm.
you want to understand what the general benchmark is for someone with your skill set and job title. So you can do a little bit of online research for that. You can network, you can join a professional association, and then you can say, you know what, if I make X number of dollars, like, that would be fair. This is the raise that I'm going to go for. And then the third step is to go and ask your boss for a raise, present the case that, hey, this is everything I've achieved, I'm looking forward to achieving more. However, the pay that I'm seeing online is different from what I'm being compensated right now. And if there's any way we can kind of bring those two numbers closer together, it would help me make sure that I'm performing my best. And then revisiting that conversation, if they give you anything to work on, or if they say no, you can ask for something else. You can say, okay, no raise, but can I get flexible working hours, or can I get additional time off, or can I get you to pay for some learning that I'm trying to invest in, or whatever it is that you want your employer to give you.
Yeah, you make another point about that, how you can't have your boss hate you. Also, you want your coworkers to respect you as well because you could use them as references. I think those are very important points that people should not overlook.
Mhm.
If your manager hates you, that's a serious issue. What
Right.
you talk about making smart goals and trying to achieve them
Mhm.
with them and try to kind of get over that.
Mhm.
I could see how that could really get in the way of advancement. I mean, what happens if there's no way? You just have to look to change positions or change jobs if you can't get out of that, correct?
Yeah, I mean, if your boss is generally like, there's valid reasons for you to maybe have, like, performance issues, and your boss being like, okay, this is not my favorite person on the team, but there's ways to overcome that by having clear communication channels and working on, a plan of action together. However, if that's not the case, like, you're performing well and your boss just doesn't like you because for whatever reason, they're not a good person, or they feel threatened by you or whatever, then you have to leave. Like, there's no way to grow in that kind of situation. That's a
Mm,
toxic situation, and you do have to leave.
yeah, and so do people. I would think that's probably a very big source of people coming to you. They're just there's no way of moving in their job. They've grown stagnant. My boss doesn't like me, and we need to make a complete change. That's got to be very difficult for somebody because, well, obviously they're used to getting that salary and they don't want to make that change. So you just coach them through that. That's a valuable resource that you provide.
Thank you so much. Yeah, that's what we do. I mean, generally our clients don't hate their bosses. That
Mm.
happens some of the time, but usually, our bosses are reasonable people. It's just sometimes you might feel stuck for whatever other reason, and whatever reason you may have that you feel like you're in a rut. If you feel like it's time for a transition, then just think about what you want to do to remarket yourself, or to shine a light on your biggest strengths, and how you want to draw people to you.
And let's talk about the interview. We kind of mentioned it before. Are most interviews done virtually now?
I would say some are, and some are still done in person in front of panels. It really depends on the type of company you're interviewing with.
In front of panels. Very
Mhm.
interesting. And I would think the higher the paid position, it'd probably be a combination.
Yeah, definitely. definitely.
So you talk to somebody in HR virtually and then have to go on site for, well, I guess again and again, it depends on the position. And what are your, so, I mean, I've had some very more good than bad, but I had some really bad personal interviews.
Mhm.
Just nervousness and not saying too much. I mean, how do you coach people through that?
The easiest way to not be nervous when you're doing an interview is to make sure that you're not only interviewing for your dream company, like you want to make sure that you're not putting that much pressure on yourself.
Hmm.
I've talked to people who interview like once every decade, and obviously that's going to be a lot of pressure. You're going to feel really stale and kind of out of your element. I would advise you to interview at least once a year, even if you're very happy with your job, because this helps you understand, first of all, the competitive landscape. If you're super happy where you are, seeing what other people are hiring for can help you understand how their departments are growing, and it can help you plan strategically as well and do better at your job. But more importantly, it helps you stay fresh. It helps you understand what kinds of questions people are asking. And when you have your real interview where you actually do want the job, you won't feel as nervous because you'll be
Hmm.
somewhat more acclimated to that kind of environment.
Do you role play with prospective clients as well?
I do, yeah. We have mock interviews sometimes, or sometimes people are just like, okay, these are some of the questions that I tend to struggle with, and brainstorm answers with them. But sometimes people are like, look, I get interviews, but I don't get the job. So in those cases, we always have mock interviews to identify where they are misrepresenting their strengths and what kind of red flags they're potentially giving employers.
So the classic questions of, what are your weaknesses? What are your strengths? How do you help people with that?
Yeah, so just assessing what they're saying and helping them make sure that whatever they are saying is more in line with what the employer would be looking for based on the role that they're hiring for. So this entails, studying the culture of the company, studying the culture of the team, what kind of professional do they want to hire? Do they want to hire somebody who can do very well with small budgets? Do they want to hire somebody who can
Hmm.
excel and manage really large budgets? Like there's so many nuances about who's going to succeed in different teams, and helping you kind of formulate your answer around what their cultural values are can really help you show that you are the best candidate for the job. So that's what my coaching generally entails.
Do you ever help the companies themselves on being better interviewers and what to look for in resumes? Do they ever come to you, the other side?
Yeah, generally, I mean, I do provide recruiting services for some smaller, I have some smaller contracts where I do that. So that does entail like, okay, this is how you need to interview. This is how to onboard a candidate. These are the things that you want to have in like your payroll philosophy and your hiring philosophy. So I do know what it's like to sit on the other side of the table, and I do
Hmm.
know what employers' priorities are. So I can help kind of bridge that gap if that's a question that you might have.
It's fascinating to me. How did you arrive? How did you started Career Tuners back in 2010? I mean, what was your experience beforehand? Why make this move?
I was in the world of environmental engineering, and I just started helping a couple friends of mine with this, and it snowballed from there. So I really love doing it. I love helping people identify, what their passions are and how to best, build a job around what they're looking for. So I really love what I do, and I'm so blessed that I'm able to do it every single day.
Good for you. And people that aren't looking for jobs, should they still kind of talk to you and look for things that they should do within their job because they still can move laterally or move up in the same company? Should they still look and seek advice from people like yourself?
Yeah, I mean, it depends on what your career objectives are. It's really helpful to have an outsider's perspective sometimes
Mm.
to see, what bottlenecks you might be experiencing. Maybe there's a way that, someone's perceiving you that you don't know. Like, for example, I had a coaching client recently where she was trying to get on her boss's good side, but it almost seemed like when she was telling me what she did, I was like, you sound really manipulative and kind of insincere, even though
Hmm.
I know you are. I know you're really sincere, but the way you're presenting yourself, like I can see why your boss finds your behavior a little bit off-putting. And we talked about, perceptions and how to work around them, and how to kind of, win her boss's attentions back in a positive way. These little things, I mean, you might not you might just like need someone objectively to kind of walk you through how you're presenting yourself and remanage that. I've had like another client where like he thought he was coming across as really passionate, but he came across like someone who was too attached to his ideas and wouldn't be flexible. Like he just
Mm.
didn't seem like he was fun to work with. So these are like critical impressions that you have to be able to overcome in order to get promotions or in order to move around and all of that. So yeah, that is something that I do help with.
And you talk also how being a better manager.
Mhm.
So obviously that's the employer side. How do you coach that? What do you talk about there?
So most recently, like I've had managers who had a hard time with like they inherited a demoralized team where their team was like overworked and burnt out. So we
Oh
talked about
wow.
how to kind of re-engage with them and reduce those instances of burnout so that they could have a very kind of sustainable relationship as opposed to, you know, putting out fires all the time, which was causing a lot of turnover. I worked with another individual who was had performance issues with her team, and I worked with another individual who had boundary issues with her team, where she was kind of carrying the weight of her team, and she had a hard time saying no. So I mean, it really depends. I mean, there's different kinds of managers everywhere. There's different management styles in terms of what makes a successful manager, and there's so many more management styles of what makes an unsuccessful manager. So what I do is I help people figure out what, what they innately are good at and do more of that and redirect their energies around that so they're not like wasting their time doing all this extra work, putting out fires and stuff, doing stuff that doesn't move the needle basically.
What's the difference between a manager and a leader?
I mean, there's a lot of overlap. A manager is somebody who closely, maybe gives more one-on-one attention to somebody. When you go higher up in an organization, you might not have so much of that one-on-one relationship, but there's a lot more work that's done in terms of strategy and external partnerships, and these help really, grow the organization in a way that just hands-on management doesn't.
Yeah, I've had a lot of managers, Fatima, that thought they were leaders, but they
Mhm.
weren't. And then I've
Mhm.
had some leaders who kind of thought they were managers. So it's kind of a it's a tough thing to kind of teach. I wonder if when you come into, yeah, like I can see the one person that you said who's kind of so passionate about their ideas, they seem inflexible. Sometimes passion kind of overrides that. And how do you coach somebody out of that?
Being honest with them, just telling them like, dude, you
Mm,
sound like a jackass. Like, I'm
right,
sorry. You need to tone it down. Like, I know you're really passionate. And that's what it takes sometimes. Like, sometimes people just don't get that objective feedback. Like,
right.
especially when you go to interviews, you'll get feedback like, sorry, but you weren't a good cultural fit. But you don't know what that really means. Maybe that means that you didn't show enough passion, or maybe it
Mm,
means that you didn't show enough ability to be flexible and kind of work with your teams. So I don't swear at my clients or anything, but I do ask them, I'm like, are you okay if I'm really blunt with you right now? Like, I
good
just
for
want to
you.
be really honest with you. And I'll tell them, you don't sound like you're fun to work with. You sound like you're really difficult to work with. You sound like you're very difficult to collaborate with. Or I tell them, like, I think your teammates think you're weak and you're going to take any excuse. And I think you need to, do X, Y, and Z so that that impression changes. Obviously, all of my recommendations are based on what I know my clients are capable of and what their strengths are. Like, I would never ask someone to do something that I know is going to be like vastly challenging for them. Uh, so I think it's important to know what your strengths and limitations are and work with them. That's what makes us, special. And that's what makes collaboration such a beautiful thing because everyone brings something different to the conversation.
Hmm. What's the worst thing that I shouldn't say the worst thing, but what's a very big problematic thing that somebody who's looking for a new position that you've had to straighten out or look for? What do you commonly see?
I mean, it's mostly that. It's that the way they're presenting themselves, it's not meshing with what the employer is looking for.
Mm.
like I wouldn't say something is vastly problematic. I would say the way you're presenting yourself isn't in line with what the employer is looking for. There might be another employer that's looking for exactly that. Maybe they are looking for someone who's very passionate and is not willing to be flexible and who's just going to get things done, you know? So it's basically helping you align along what the employer is looking for. And I also teach my clients how to read those job descriptions for themselves and read between the lines to see exactly what they need to be articulating and why.
And the dynamic from working from home, the pandemic pushed us all there. And just this morning in the Wall Street Journal, I guess it's harder and harder to find more home jobs. I don't know. I didn't read the whole article, but how has that dynamic shifted from employer to employee and what you do?
Well, I have always worked remotely, so it hasn't changed the way I serve my clients, but I know that remote work has blurred the line between work and home for a lot of people,
Mm.
especially people who have, who are working parents. So that has made things very challenging for some people, while for others, it has made things a lot better because they don't have the headache of commuting anymore. So I think it really depends on the person and the nature of their work.
Well, especially in Los Angeles where you are, right? I mean, the commuting is, yeah,
Yeah, the commute can be pretty bad.
it can be pretty bad. Yeah. And, I'm in the tech field, so we work remotely. It's just the way it is. But, there's good and there's pros and cons, right? Because sometimes it's hard to separate your personal and business. And it's hard to manage that too sometimes.
Mhm.
So on the podcast, Fatima, I always bring up, I lost a lot of weight. I started my business. I gained a lot of weight. Doctor said I wasn't going to see my daughter graduate. By the way,
Mhm.
she just graduated Cal State right there in your backyard, by the way. And so I lost a lot of weight. People ask me how, and I just say discipline. I
Mhm.
wonder how discipline plays a role in your life.
Discipline, I think. So I would say I am very, very disciplined. I would
Hmm.
say I have like a very intense work ethic. However, I know that not everyone does. And to be completely disciplined all the time isn't something that's attainable and realistic for a lot of people either. And sometimes there's beauty in just resting, and you get a lot more creativity and you get a lot more work done if you've just had a little bit of space to be creative. So, like, I think, especially the clients that I've been coaching, like, they're like, I'm so disciplined, like, I get everything done. And but if you look at their overall satisfaction and whether their performance is good, it's sometimes not. Because
Mm.
just because you're disciplined and you're getting everything done, it doesn't mean you're prioritizing the right work. It doesn't mean that you are able to get results for your team. It doesn't mean that you're able to prioritize your health and family. And these things are really what define a successful professional, right? So if you have a lot of discipline, but you're like, I don't know, like my life just isn't improving, like that means it's probably time to take a break from discipline and look at the bigger picture and what you're trying to achieve.
It's fascinating your spin, your cut, Fatima, on discipline. You equate it to work ethic and
Hmm.
completion of work because of
Right.
of what you do. That's very and
And
so
consistency and like
consistency.
doing the same, having a routine and all of that is how you define discipline different?
Yes, it is
Mhm.
actually, but that's the
How do you
beauty of
define
it.
discipline?
Well, my thesis is that discipline is a spectrum, of which you mentioned consistency could be one area.
Mhm.
I talk to some people. They say discipline is the teachers, yelling at me in school to get my work done, or
Mhm.
not to talk. Or some people have more self discipline. I don't think there's a right answer, but it's
Mhm.
amazing to me. I've interviewed, I've talked to over 200, and everybody answers it differently.
Mhm.
Everybody answers that question differently, and given your background and and what you do, it's perfect. Perfect. I am not surprised. It's wonderful.
Mhm.
Because I think it gets a bad rap. I get pushback, Fatima. I get people saying you don't need discipline, you need passion, compassion, and you
Mhm.
need love. And I say I believe that too. I'm not Captain Discipline. There's so many things I'm short on. But
Mhm.
so what motivates you, Fatima Misra? What motivates you?
I think anytime we get like a good Google review, that's like the best feeling in the world. Like we just had a
Ah,
client update his where he was like, I got the job that I wanted. So he first left a review saying he got the job that he wanted, and he came back and updated it again today. He said that he got double the pay that he had at his last job. So I was like,
Wow.
okay, that's really good. That's a really good feeling. So that's what motivates me. Those getting good feedback from our customers who are more satisfied and better paid at their jobs.
Yeah, you're helping people ultimately, aren't you?
Hmm.
Yeah, that must be one. When you first said Google review, I'm thinking, wow, but then I kind of understood why, where that came from. Yeah, yeah,
The
that
content of the Google reviews, not just the number.
of course, yes, yes. Is that the most rewarding part of your what you do?
Yeah, getting positive feedback from our customers, definitely. Like I want to see them being like, I'm more I think that was a really fun review to get today. But most recently I got a review where my one of my leadership coaching clients said, I used to work 60-hour weeks, now I'm working 40-hour weeks, but my team's performance has improved and I feel a lot happier and I actually have time for my family now. So I was like, okay, that's really special. It's not like you're not having more money in the bank, but you're having, more time to do what you want, and your team is happier too. So that was a really good review to receive as well.
That is wonderful. So, how do you measure success?
That is how we measure success. Like we want to see if people are getting jobs and if they're getting good jobs that they like, if they're happy at their jobs. So these are some of the factors that we measure.
It's interesting the dynamic with 30 employees and you're all really good at job performance. And I mean, how's the dynamic inside the organization with that, with knowing that? I mean, what's the old saying, the cobbler's kids don't have shoes. So everybody understands how it works, and how is it more difficult to manage people who have all this extra knowledge about this?
No, I mean I also do like coach my team internally. Like I meet with all of our managers and I help them, if they're running into any issues. I can genuinely say like I love all of my colleagues. They are
Yes.
my first family because I met them before I met my husband. So they are definitely my first family. They've been with me through a lot. My three of my colleagues will be with me for 10 years
Wow.
soon. So that's like a big win for me. And the rest, hopefully, they'll do their 10 years soon as well. So no, we don't have any like major issues as such. I mean, we all have, interpersonal conflict from time to time. We have
Sure.
disagreements about things that we need to prioritize. But I think we have such an open culture where people, share all the time. There's no like hoarding of information or resources. So that helps get things done really quickly. We're also very flexible because we are a bit smaller. Like we don't have a lot of bureaucracy and stuff bogging us
Mm.
down. So that helps us get things done really quickly.
Yeah, it's easier to when you're not that big to do that. Like I said, I'm a small business owner myself, and
Mhm.
it's easier to. Is everybody generally? Do you have a lot of face to face, or people in your Los Angeles area?
Yeah, we have a lot of face to face. Whoever is not in the LA area, we make sure we stay face to face with video calls. We have, every department has weekly video calls or like daily, depending on who they are and what they're working on. So that really helps make sure that that connection is strong and it helps keep collaboration smooth as well. We don't over meet either, which I think is really
Mm,
annoying.
mm.
So we keep things really effective and efficient.
Do you have to coach people differently based on their location? Somebody in New York versus Dallas or Jacksonville. Does regionality ever come into play?
I think it does. I mean not formally, but I know someone who, is in Minnesota is going to have a different style of working than someone in New
Mm,
York, and how they approach things might be a little bit different. But in general, there's less difference in terms of that. Like I feel like that is a smaller factor than who you are innately as a person. Like
mm.
some people are innately like people pleasers. Some people are innately like, they want to keep things really organized. So I think that personality trait has more of a factor on, who you are as a person in the workplace.
And then I guess the next question is, do we add country? I mean, if people are in English speaking, so Canada versus the UK, for example, is there different styles that way?
Yeah, I've worked with some clients from the UK and they definitely have a different working style. UK people be talking a lot. I'm sorry, but it's true.
What do you mean? They talk a lot? They just
They talk a lot. Like they talk a lot. Like normally I'll have a call with a client, it'll be like an hour. I don't know why. I don't know if I found like the most chatty people in the UK, but every single one of my UK clients, it's like 3 hours.
what?
I swear, it's like three times as long. I think they're really friendly. Like they want to share a lot. Like like an American client will be like, okay, so I have a team and these are the things and blah blah blah. But like a UK person will be like, okay, so I have this team. First there's Rebecca, and that's who she is. Oh, by the way, her son is blah blah. And like they'll like tell me everyone's little story, and I'm like, this is not really relevant to what we're trying to achieve. But I love it. It's very interesting to meet people from different cultures who have different perspectives, and like that's their way of like being social
Yeah.
and stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, it's their way of connecting.
Yeah, we do. We are a bit kind of cut here a little bit, but we're still very friendly, just kind of in a different way.
Mhm.
Yeah, very interesting. And then, I mean, non-English speaking. I mean, how about Australia? You ever deal with anybody there? What's that like?
Yeah, we've had a couple of Australian clients. I don't think I've personally had an Australian client. I think my teammates have. But yeah, it was. I mean, generally, it's a lot of fun to work with people from different cultures, and this cultures. I think it's not just about your country; it's also about your industry. Like different industries have different
Mm.
cultures, so um, yeah, it's always fun to work with new people.
Well, you're doing great things. I was very excited when you accepted this, because it's just, I think, too many times this is overlooked. Just the do you consider it an art or a science what you do, or both?
I would say it's a science. I would say there's definitely like an if this then that kind of thing that goes
Mm.
on. I think it can be seen as an art to the uninitiated, but I think when you have as much experience as I do, like you can easily boil it down into a science.
Yeah, just by the way you're speaking to me and by the way you speak to some of your clients, hey, look, I think this is the way it is. You're coming off as, over the top, and I can see how you can boil things down a bit. It's nice, it's
Mhm,
refreshing.
mhm, mhm.
So, how can we get in touch with you, Fatima Mirza? This was great.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. So if you guys want to connect with me and talk to me about what you're working on and potentially transitioning to a new field, you can reach out to me at careertuners.com. And there you can also grab what I like to call my salary doubling resume cheat sheet. It breaks down a case study of someone who was able to double their initial offer with just their resume. And I show you why. I show you how a positive first impression in that resume can really trickle down all the way through the salary negotiation process. So check that out.
Yeah, that's a great resource. Your Instagram has got a lot of great quotes. So does your Twitter. Career Tuners, CareerTuners. We'll make sure we put it in the show notes. Fatima, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate what you do, and you be well.
Thank you so much, Joe. Thank you so much for having me.
Bye now.
All right, bye bye.
Thank you for listening and or viewing Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations. Please share this episode with one or two of your friends who you think may benefit from the episode. Our website, www.joeypins.com. There you'll find lots of resources, and you could join our mailing list. Please follow us on all our social media, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Podcast information, the video version of our podcast is on YouTube. Please subscribe. Audio is on all major podcasting platforms. Please follow them. And if you like it, please consider giving 5-star rating. Would really appreciate that. Would you like to financially support the podcast? You can go to our Patreon site. Consider $5, $10, or $20 a month. There's all kind of plans that we have there. There's like a one-time payment. What is this podcast episode worth to you? $25, $50, $100, $500, $1,000, $5,000. You be the judge. You can go to our PayPal account to do that as well. Thank you again for listening or watching Joey Pin's Discipline Conversations.